So could you tell me a little bit just about the art that you've been making?
Sure. So generally they're porcelain forms, and it's primarily focused on oceanic organisms, and both celebrating the beauty and the life and the vibrancy and the strangeness of them, and it also taking a deep concern of the demise and the unfortunate side of what's happening in our oceans as well. So my work hints at the concerns around climate change and the effects on these organisms, and by having my porcelain forms in their inherent white, suggesting the bleaching that's happening in the oceans. But however, there's a lot of excitement and vibrancy and movement and rich detail to celebrate these forms. So it's kind of a combination of both worlds. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what my work is about. And then as far as materials, I primarily use porcelain as my primary medium, but I also integrate metals, fine metals, and occasionally crystals, and in some cases I even illuminate some of the works, like you see in the ocean floor.
Can you describe the mindset that you go into when you're thinking about creating something?
Sure. Each piece has this kind of continuation of the commentary I just spoke of. However, each work is inspired by something that may be going on in my personal life. For example, the piece I showed here was called Intrepid Growth, and I just finished a personal journey that was, very difficult time in my life, and I learned a lot from it myself. So even though it's a continuation of my general theme, it also hints at, my own personal experiences I'm involved in right now. So that kind of triggers the inspiration for each individual piece as daily life changes for me. So there's a dichotomy of both worlds happening in my pieces.
Would you be willing to talk a little bit about that experience that you've had? Because I think that's pretty incredible.
Yes.
I think people can be inspired by it.
Yeah, so I am one of the very, very fortunate people that had something to lean on during a very difficult time, which is cancer. So during this time, facing treatment and just the misery, the pain, the fear that cancer creates, I was fortunate to lean on something as a distraction. So I very fortunately had a lot of time in my studio where I could meditate, reflect, distract away from what was going on in my health. So I worked on my pieces, and again, for example, one of the largest pieces I worked on was called Recovery. And this piece was a personal hope for my own recovery, but a hope for recovery of, the ocean and the organisms. And, it was kind of a really beautiful way to get away from thinking about what was going on in my life, which was very, very scary, and just it helped in a very therapeutic sense to focus on that.
Can you think back kind of the mindset of when you go to the studio? What was going through your head, would you say? Or was it kind of just a way to escape?
Yeah, I think I was, at times, and most times I would say I was pretty euphoric about working on a new piece every time. So as much as I do say it was an escape and it was a distraction, I really feel like each time I started a new piece, I would sketch and I would get to a place where I cannot wait to get started on this, just like any other day. But in reality, it was a huge distraction, and that was just kind of like on the side, kind of an after effect. Yes, I am escaping this, but I think what triggered me to go to the studio and get into my pieces and the mindset I would go was just the euphoria and excitement to start on a new piece that I've sketched out and just have this vision for. So I think my general mindset was really positive, just to work on a new piece, the excitement of that, like a blank canvas.
I feel like there's so much detail in what you do. Are you thinking about each piece as you create it, or do you kind of get into that flow state?
That's actually a really good question. I initially used to start off drawing, very detailed, almost like a map of exactly what this piece would look like. And as I've evolved, I've realized I've kind of let go and let my hands take over and just go as I, just feel to just go in a veer in a different direction if necessary. So when I actually work on a piece, I start with a vision, and quite often, and it turns into something a little different than I initially expected. Sometimes things just change in itself in the kiln, but also the more I've worked, my hands are now driving just on the fly almost what the piece will eventually look like.
It seems in a lot of ways it's similar to a physical expression. Like I think about dance or music,
Yes.
like you're just kind of letting it go.
Yes.
At a certain point.
Yes. It's very meditational. It's very, I can almost close my eyes and work on my work now. It is a very different place in my mind. I think I just start thinking of, the movement of my hands creating the piece as opposed to just strictly a drawing. And it's very emotional, it's very therapeutic, it's very meditational, so there's all those little components that get into, if you look at my pieces, they are very detailed and they look like everything was, designed with precision, but it's very much not that at all. It's very organic.
It makes sense, I guess, for the subject.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
What has art been to you like over the years? Have you always had a creative outlet?
Yes, it has permeated in my life through everything. And when you say art, I think of everything creative, from fashion. That was my first initial background, and then I went on to painting, and then I really focused on painting, and then eventually even collaborations with my father. My father and I did a collaborative collection of photography and painting together, and it was a very beautiful bond we had together, and it was exciting to see it actually cater to hospitality and luxury hotel restaurant industry, and we even started to have a bit of a lucrative business behind it, which was unexpected. It was just kind of a happy accident that there was a demand for our type of work. So I've gone through all these different phases. Once my dad passed, I couldn't do two-dimensional work anymore. It was a little painful because it was just a reminder of working with my father, and I kind of wanted to start something very new and be in a very settled place. And I had always experimented with materials. I'm a material junkie. I like to combine things that typically don't combine together, and there's been a lot of happy accidents and a lot of just full-blown accidents, and just coming from fabric, then going to painting, and then eventually to sculpture. You work with so many different materials. I used to make my own materials. Like I used to make my pigments from anything with flower petals and henna and all kinds of materials, and I would create, and some would last and some would work and some would not, and I've just always been that way. Similarly now with sculpture, I add metals and then crystals and things. Traditional ceramists kind of look shocked at me, and I'm a little, they have a lot of questions for me because I'm breaking every rule possible, but I think that's the nature of the excitement in the process for me, to constantly evolve and to play with materials.
What do you think is there like a common thread that happens with, because I feel like a lot of creative people have a lot of outlets.
Yeah.
Is there something that you kind of take from one thing to another?
It's texture. I think I've always, even when I was way back in fashion, I was more obsessed and concerned with texture and how to, make things more, form related. I wasn't so concerned with the subtleties. I was more interested in dramatic texture and really breaking the boundaries with form. And so I think every different medium I've played with through my life, from artistic career, that's kind of been a common thread. Is I've always my paintings had layers and layers and layers of thin water media based pigment, semi-precious mineral paints and things like that, and built up really subtly. But by the end of the day, there was a lot of layers of textures going on, even in my paintings. And now, of course, I've gone nuts with texture in my pieces, and actually the last several shows, not several, but the last couple of shows I've been in, the title of the shows have actually used the word texture in some way or another. So it's been something I think I've always just either been attracted to, or it's just my nature. I just like to work with texture, and I think that's definitely been a common thread.
Something I'm also curious about, because I know you through work.
Yeah.
Is like, how do you balance work and creativity?
I just separate the two, and that took me a while to come to that realization. I've been down the road, like I mentioned, having a business with my father, and I did think, there's a chance maybe this could be my full-blown career, and I can just happily, create fine artwork for, like I said, for the hospitality, luxury. But once we started getting kind of market trend, requests to cater to, it kind of lost its luster. The fun was kind of gone, and I started to realize, I'm going to definitely separate career and my passion for my art, and just go crazy all the time in my studio and do whatever I want, but have a career that's separate. And luckily, I have a career that does utilize and leverage my creativity to some degree. But in the end, I am doing work for a client or a business who calls the shots. So there's that understanding that, I'm never going to be fully fulfilled. I won't have that creative outlet and enrichment, through a career that's very separate from my fine art that I work on.
That's something I've struggled with, is like the monetization.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you think there's any like universal art concepts or like mindsets that you've discovered, that you've talked to other people and seen like, oh yeah, I feel that way too, or?
Mm-hmm. That's a difficult one. I think I've met artists all over the world. I was in a exhibition in Florence not too long ago, and I got to talk to people from all over the world. And I think it's just, I almost want to say no. I haven't come across a universal mindset that all artists share in any specific category that just comes to mind. The one thing I do personally view, and I think maybe all artists share, is that art is a personal expression, and it can evolve in medium, and it can evolve in even subject matter or veer, but it's a personal expression. I think that's the bottom line. There's so many, it's just wide open what you can do with that, so yeah, I don't think I've found a common thread quite yet.
I'm trying to think about like what is it that people can find satisfaction in, like, because I feel like so many people have creative outlets that may not be thought of as art.
Yeah.
Do you find any, like, do you ever just really enjoy cooking, or do you ever think of those as like creative outlets, or do you kind of?
Yes, so I suck at cooking, so I won't go there, but I will say, when, for example, I said it permeates through all kinds of areas in my life. I love home decor. In fact, to the extreme where, I've had friends or acquaintances that think that that's my business because I talk about it way too much. I am a big DIY person, and I experiment in my own home. My house in itself, the footprint of my studio is larger than the house itself, and I bought the house because it's such a strange and interesting home that I don't think most people appreciated the strangeness of it, and I really leveraged it, and I saw it as one big creative project for me. So in fashion, again, I create ridiculous costumes for my daughter and live through her whether she wants to wear them on Halloween or not. And they're usually costumes that piss off all the other parents because they're just going to Spirit Halloween, and mine look like she's ready to go to a theater. So there are trickles of areas in my life that it really comes out strong. Even just setting a table, I can go nuts. So there's all kinds of different areas that I do. Travel, it's something that I've now started to make travel plans, which I'm passionate about. I love traveling, but I've started to make travel plans around where I can show my art and look at art. So whatever's going on, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna, try to get into, the art scene there and see if I can penetrate, because I'm loving what they're doing there. I want to see what they're doing there. I want to be a part of it. So, there's different areas where my creativity is, very engaged in life. So when I think about it, I think that also helps me have a balance when I have a job that doesn't necessarily fulfill that area at all, because I know a lot of artists struggle with this. You want to be true to yourself. You want to spend, a predominant amount of your time working on your art and have it as a career, preferably. Most artists would love that, but unfortunately, it's not reality for most of us. So I think I've gotten to the point where I have so much there for me, so much fulfillment in being artistic and being, engaged in doing things that I wholeheartedly can express myself creatively, that my work doesn't bother me as much, because it can. And, I think I'm fortunate that I've gotten to this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone lives like a perfect life,
Yes.
There's going to be something.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
It seems like you're able to express yourself as well, like all the things you mentioned. It's
Yeah.
like outward expressions of your creativity.
Yes. Yeah. So I do feel fortunate. And again, it's been a road to get here. It's not like it was like this. There was a lot of frustration early in my career. And I think that's one thing a lot of artists ask me about, that is like, how do you have, monetize your art and be, and I tell them immediately, I don't, I keep it very separate, and it's hard to separate yourself that way, so I think it's taken me a long road to get here. So, yeah.
Do you feel like generally fulfilled, would you say?
We can all have better. I would love to have the kind of, whatever you want to call it, stature or just some ability in my workplace to just take over a project creatively and call the shots on it, and fully do that. And then but there are projects that I feel like I was able to do more of that than other projects. And other projects, it's absolutely, I'm not happy with the end result myself, because it's not me, putting my own creative input. It's, a lot of other people that need to fill in their needs, and in the end, it doesn't look like what I would like. So, yeah, it could be better. I do feel very fulfilled. I feel very fortunate. I feel like I've come a long way from the frustrations I've had earlier in my career. But yeah, it could be better, of course. So, but generally speaking, I think I'm very fulfilled.
Do you have any advice that you give to people kind of making their way through the creative identity world?
The one general advice I like to do is to try to just look at your work, your creativity, and your artwork as a passion, and nothing more, nothing less. Don't look at it as a way to monetize it and have it as a lucrative business. Don't look at it as a way to show it in galleries per se. It's something that should just be just the process of creating it. You should get to a place where that is euphoric and in itself therapeutic and exciting and fun. So all the other things are extras that are pluses and nice, and whether you get to show your work or not, whether you sell any work or not, those are very small parts, and you'll begin to realize, even when they do happen, it's not the thing that makes you happiest. It's actually creating it. And if you can just look at your artwork as just pure passion, it just becomes so freeing, to just enjoy it and not feel like it has to do something other than just creating it. Yeah, and it's nice to talk about it out loud, because I think about things, and I have changed both in what I expected of myself, what I considered successful, in the results I want from my work. It evolves for everybody, and this whole conversation does make me realize, there's still growth to be had. I have no idea what my conversation would look like, years from now, and I know I've come from a very different mindset and expectation and frustration levels. I think it's been very, and going through cancer has also opened my eyes. And actually, a good thing that's come out of it, I feel very relaxed. I feel very fortunate, and I feel like my art has come to a very beautiful place for me. And I'm just very, I think, relaxed and fulfilled that my work, I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, can you scrap that part?
I thought you were going somewhere really profound.
But it is. I think it's just been this new mindset that life is so fragile, and now when I create these pieces, they're so precious, and I'm just, they're gonna live beyond me, and I didn't think about those things. Nobody thinks about those things when you're not faced with death. When I was making every single piece I made, I thought, wow, this is, my daughter may have this 20 years from now sitting in her living room, or it may be, who knows where this might move on to. And it was such a beautiful thing to think that there's pieces of me everywhere. And that by itself gave me this just inner peace, knowing that I have done something and left something behind, even if I can't make it, myself physically to be here. So I think that added a huge, learning and growth experience for me. Again, why I called that piece Intrepid Growth, because there has been something good that came out of something so ugly like cancer.
Yeah, it's like a manifestation of like the memories that you have with people,
exactly.
things like that. That's really, it's really nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that you were able to beat cancer and make it through, because that sounded very intense.
Yeah, it is. I feel like it's almost like I'm a little more in slow motion. I was in a fast-paced sort of mentality. I need to get this done because I have work projects going here and I have life running really fast. But now, even now, after I've beaten cancer, I create these pieces and I have little flashes of memories and life, which was not happening when I created these pieces. And it's appreciating life so much more. There's so much more enrichment in visualizing these memories, and they're just somehow seeping into my pieces now, which never happened before. So I think that's gold compared to, the misery of what I had to be dealing with physically with cancer.
Yeah, I mean, it is, you're putting yourself into it, whether you realize it or not, I guess.
Yes.
You're activating these.
Yeah, something's happened. It's really hard to explain. And it's almost like I wish I could give this to other people without them having to experience, something this way. It's a little almost mystic or spiritual. It's really strange. And I don't even think I've mentioned this to anybody, but it's a beautiful and haunting feeling at the same time. And I think my pieces are starting to reflect that. So at the same time, I'm having a lot more activity around my art, and I didn't expect it or even desire it. I didn't even think I could physically get to or bring my work. I was a little worried about traveling so quickly after cancer, but it's been nothing but fun and exciting and pleasing, and just the best results. Expectations. It exceeded my expectations by far. So sometimes when you're in sync and you have this harmony with yourself, inner self, it comes out in your work, and then the universe around you starts, recognizing it. So I'm getting all kinds of attention, and I really did not expect it. I have the show ending here. I have a back-to-back show in Houston, and so much activity, virtually. I have so many things going on with my work as well. So it's an exciting time. I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds almost like a rebirth in some ways in your mentality.
It is. That's a great word for it. It is a rebirth. I'm going to use that. I love it. It's true. Yeah, that's a perfect explanation or description of what I'm going through. Definitely rebirth.